Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Thunderstorm. I'm Kaznarious, and with me is the ThePorkChopper.
Hi, everybody.
And today we're here to talk about 12 minutes again. The loop has been reset. ThePorkChopper, how do you feel about this game? Has your opinion changed at all since you mentioned it to me before on that wonderful day talking about the games of 2020?
Yes and no. I feel like over time, my problem with the game has sort of shifted more just to the fact that, like plot holes kind of make it impossible.
Yeah,
I think it's a game that it's more disappointing to me because it has a cool premise and it's got so much potential, and it's just squandered with a really terrible twist and a terrible narrative.
I want to try and get into things that we didn't mention in the other video. Mainly, how do you feel about the actual setting of it, of this little cramped apartment?
Um,
I'll let you think on that. Like, I get it's a small, cramped apartment, but it just kind of felt like they could have fleshed it out a bit more. I don't know, maybe like an extra couch or something, maybe more paintings on the wall. The rub with that is if they added more interactable things, then you'd really have players scratching their heads on where the fuck they go to progress the story, and the game already has that problem in spades.
yeah, although technically it could also have the reverse effect where having maybe an extra room or two or something, more things to interact with, might have allowed for maybe more creative puzzles or something, or maybe it could have been in a better layout that sort of aids progression a bit better.
I agree with you that the game could have used a lot more interesting puzzles. Would you agree with me that the uh the putting to wife to sleep slash shocking the intruder man is probably the most interesting puzzle in the game?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I gotta know, in terms of like actually using things in the environment, I did feel real smart when I figured that out. Funny enough, I always go into these bitching about how much I dislike old point and click adventure games like Monkey Island because of how obtuse the puzzles are in that. I think the first Eponia game, you have to like combine a sock with a toothbrush or something silly like that. And that really turned me off from those games. I never had that problem with this game. My only problems with progression really came at the end when I was not necessarily saying the wrong dialogue, but like saying it at the wrong time.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
really hard to know exactly when you need to say certain things, so it gets really frustrating.
and yeah, and it's like I feel like the game could have leaned more into just like kind of helping you, like when you reach a certain threshold. Yeah, the dialogue itself is it gets really annoying near the end when A, it's constantly repeating, and B, you have to say the right thing at the right time. I'm pretty sure when you actually get past the point where Bumblebee convinces the cop to talk to you, like he won't talk to you. He will not talk to you personally. He'll only talk to the wife, and that leads to a bunch of really strange gameplay dissonance. When I mean gameplay dissonance, I mean like shit that takes you out of like the cinematic experience of it. Because for a lot of games, like I don't know, silly JRPGs and stuff like that, I can accept gameplay dissonance. It's something I'm a gamer. I've had to endure a lot of awkward dialogue
Yeah.
through a slew of different games, but I believe that 12 minutes is genuinely billing itself as a cinematic experience to a point.
I mean, when you've got those people like Willem Dafoe, Daisy Ridley, uh, Tom McAvoy, I think is his name.
James McAvoy.
James
And
McAvoy, yeah.
no, it's Tom Holland. He's fucking playing everybody nowadays.
Oh, good.
But it's not even just that though. The 12 minutes promotional art, it's evocative of movies like Vertigo.
I was about to say
Like,
Vertigo, yeah.
yeah, it wants to evoke this idea that you're playing what could be a movie. And when you get into a situation where The cop is talking to your wife, and the situation is being calmed down, and the cop's like, "All right, you know what? I fucked up. Here's my reason." He like admits everything to you. He admits that he wanted the watch for himself to pay for his daughter's medical bills. And then you, just out of curiosity, decide to ask the cop about his daughter, and his reaction is bad move, pal, and then he punches you in the face and ends the loop. That is
Yeah.
some serious gameplay dissonance. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah, when you consider the context of the scene, it doesn't make any sense that that's about to happen if you ask that question.
this happens all the time. Not just from saying the wrong thing, but as I mentioned on a previous loop, the whole our protagonist explaining that he's the wife's brother, and then him saying this weird, sexy "hey" every time you try to talk to her. This game is full of it, and it kind of feels like if you ironed it out a bit, you could, if you either restricted the player in like what they say, or like just straight up like went through a bunch of possibilities that this kind of dialogue wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think it would be a, like, I don't know, a more coherent experience for me as a player, because when shit like that happens, all I think is, okay, I'm playing a video game. And yeah, I am playing a video game, but I think the intent is for you to not think you're playing a video game at points. So I've got a couple questions for you. Do you think there's a point where a piece of media is so bad it loses artistic merit?
Yes. Yeah, I personally do.
Do you think this game hits that threshold?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, so like I was saying in the video for the Game Awards, I don't think this is art. I think at some point early in the game, I did feel that it was, but it's just with decisions with the story and things like that, and also issues that I had with the gameplay. I think there's too much that's kind of holding it back that you start to see that the further you get into the game.
I agree with all of that, and I do think it is a death by a thousand cuts. The ending is the most divisive part of this game, but I think if the gameplay itself was more fleshed out, and that gameplay dissonance with the narrative didn't happen, and I didn't have a bunch of other problems with the plot, I could probably forgive the ending this game gives you. But it's when you factor in all of this, all of the strange bullshit that happens throughout the game, I kind of get to that ending, which is entirely open ended. No matter what you think the ending is, you have to make a series of assumptions. Because of all of that, I can't help but call this ending pretentious. Do I think this game has lost its artistic merit because of it? Uh, Maybe not necessarily. It's tough, right? Because I could say I liked a character's performance, but the weird part about each of these performances is that most of their lines are made in a vacuum. Each of these actors kind of just saying their lines, and them kind of being cut into different places, that kind of sounds weird. I guess I'm going to hit you with another big one. Do you think this game has like a core message to it?
I think if it does, it's hard to tell what it actually is because I feel like if there is a message there, it's been jumbled so poorly, like the rest
Mm.
of the writing that I can't really tell.
I'm going to attempt to be kind of charitable towards this game, and I'll say that I think like what this game is trying to do is portray PTSD essentially. This constant loop of events where the husband gets killed or the wife gets killed, and they're constantly in a traumatic experience, and that's constantly repeating. I think that's supposed to be like evocative of what people actually deal with in real life. I think that there's that, and then there's like the fact that every character in the game has to deal with their own trauma. The cop has the trauma of his best friend getting killed, and technically like the ongoing issue of his daughter, although that I don't know if that's really you could say it's trauma. The trauma of like having to like deal with a dying child, which is rough, but like again, gets immediately sidelined for our bullshit plot. Like that's the funny thing. If you I found with this game like the more you think about each of the little scenarios that happens, the more I think, man, if that was fleshed out, that would actually be kind of an interesting plot point. He's got his trauma. The wife has the trauma of, killing her dad and trying to escape that. And I suppose you could say that the husband's trauma is both him killing his dad and forgetting it, and either the loop represents that trauma or the loop is trauma, constantly, playing over in his mind. That's my interpretation of it. I'm sure there's a lot of things that might contradict that, or a lot of things that people have said online that like flesh it out more than that. But with that being my most charitable interpretation of what this game is trying to say, I also don't like it. That's how I put it together, and I really hate at points how this game does trauma. This is a weird question, but like, do you think the wife really needed to like relive that difficult memory of killing her dad with our main character? Set aside the loop. This person killed their dad and then moved past it and like tried to live another life. Do you think they should tell their spouse?
It's a difficult
Right.
question to answer.
Yeah.
I could say no because it's traumatic for them to sort of relive it,
Yeah.
but I can also see it from the other side where because that's such a big part of that person's life, maybe in order for you to really understand your spouse, that might be something that you need to know. I don't know. I guess it could go either way.
There is I don't believe that there's a right answer, but what I will say is that the answer the game gives us is that yes, you should relive your trauma so that your partner completely accepts you, and they will definitely accept you for who you are, and they'll love you no matter what. Now, that doesn't happen obviously later when the brother says, "Hey, I'm your fucking brother," and I kill her dad. Having to constantly relive that and like constantly say, "Okay, no, we're in this together." I don't know, like it feels strange to me that the game is making like an affirmative statement that like, yeah, you know what, you're in a committed relationship, you should relive that trauma, you should absolutely tell this person this thing that really hurts you, even though like it probably actually won't affect them. I mean, debatably. In this case, it obviously does affect them, but I don't know. I kind of took that as a statement towards that, and I didn't like this game's statement about that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it's time we get into incest. Unfortunately, the thing is about this game is that it's easy to say incest bad, and it fucking is, but it's just like every time I see a comment section looking at Groundhog Day, it's the ending where you tell the cop to fuck off and you and your wife go along like nothing happened. It's just so gross on like so many levels. Like, taking away the incest part of it, it's disgusting because our main character isn't telling the truth.
Yeah.
And in that scenario that it actually does affect them, she absolutely deserves to know. Ugh, I don't know. When I say I figured out the ending to this game really early on, when I said that in my 2021 video, the second somebody mentioned that she had a half brother, my brain immediately made the connection of, okay, Porkchopper says this game is gross, uh, and there's only three characters in the story. It ain't the cop. Oh god.
Yeah.
In a better written story, I would be able to sit down and say, fuck, this is a really tense situation. This is a truly fucked situation. But again, the death by a thousand cuts, here it just kind of feels like shock value. I don't like that.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I feel like there are probably other ways that they could have handled it without that.
If you were going to fix this game, what do you think the ending would be?
Hmm. I can't say what the ending itself should be, but what I do think is if the wife actually did kill her dad and you scrap the incest and the justification for incest out of it, and you find a way to build that up into a satisfying ending, that would have made for a much better narrative and a better game.
And I think that would be interesting, more interesting actually, because then there's an actual argument and like an actual reason to go into that trauma.
Yeah,
Perhaps in that scenario, you have a situation where the wife's conscience is like her guilt is eating away at her. For some reason, it is actually affecting your relationship. And it's at that point, it's like, yeah, maybe you should address that kind of trauma. That's definitely an interesting take. I don't know what I'd do. I just feel like I'd just make it more concrete. And the thing about this ending is that it's almost just like, hey, asshole, build your own ending. Was it all a dream? Did it actually happen? When does the meditation actually take place? Fuck you. Go figure it out yourself. I'd probably address the time loop. I don't know. I'd more concretely say if it was in his head or like what the fuck is going on.
yeah. Another way that the story could have been improved is if you played from the perspective of the wife,
Yeah.
and then you have this internal struggle with trauma over killing your father and, everything with that, and then trying to navigate your way through this story with this cop without, maybe trying to do it. Hmm, I was going to say that
Oh,
without trying to reveal exactly what you did to the husband, but that would also maybe kind of be fucked up.
see, okay.
But
Here's
that,
the thing. I think you're actually really onto something by playing as the wife. Because if it's from the wife's perspective, then you know what's happened. And again, that idea of maybe this creeping up on you and how that affects you would be really interesting. And we, like, most importantly, we wouldn't have an unreliable narrator. In any of the endings, you have to, like, assume that he forgets that he killed his dad. And sorry, I forgot to mention this before. I was thinking about it today. Um, when I say that I hate how this game deals with trauma, it's like, okay, you should also like an avenue is to tell your spouse, and another avenue is to just literally forget, live in the present moment, hypnotize yourself, and I feel like that definitely doesn't fucking work.
yeah,
It's called trauma for a fucking reason. Like, you can't just ask your magical therapist dad to fucking give you a pocket watch and have you forget your horrible memories. Like, but if it's from the wife's perspective, then suddenly our the husband him kind of coming to terms with the fact that, oh God, he's he's your brother. He killed your dad. Like it's much more interesting. And then like we as the player could like go through. It's like, fuck, he knew this all along. Like that's an interesting scenario just from the perspective of like living with a fucked up person like that.
I feel
Um,
like that would be so much more like a more compelling
yeah,
narrative.
I don't know if it's just me, but like I felt like so much of the husband's internal dialogue was just kind of insipid, I guess. Like not James McAvoy's fault, but like it just feels very everyman. And yeah, no, that the idea that you had is actually really fucking interesting. It's also weird to me, just like the fact that there's an option to like kill everybody. Like you can get the
Yeah.
right, like you can get the cops gun, kill your wife, kill the cop, kill yourself. It's kind of like why I guess if you were like trapped in a time loop, like maybe you would try that on like your thousandth attempt, but
Alternatively, that you could just shoot yourself, like allowing you to literally just like mass murder on everybody's
the
on like
thing is, like, yeah, I don't know. The story doesn't feel dark enough to go that route. Like, yeah, our main character gets hit with a bombshell that he forgot that he killed his dad. But like, there's never a point where like I don't know, it kind of feels like the time loops are like really fucking with him. He'll say, "Oh man, that really sucked," and then he'll go and do his thing. Like there's never a point where like the dialogue gets really desperate. I would have started to have like optional dialogue for like, I don't know, the 30th time where it's like I'm getting really fucked up now. The husband starts saying just weird shit. That's just that's not necessary. That just I don't know. That would be fun to me, I guess. Um,
And I think it would help showing the effects of the trauma on the main character,
yeah.
if nothing else. Yeah.
How do you feel about calling a little girl, telling her dad's gonna kill you, and that he has it all wrong, and then that totally working? Like, what the
I
fuck?
I understand why they did that, but it's really weird. Like one because I don't know how that would fly in the real world, and two, just because it feels so awkward.
I have to assume she's like in a hospital bed taking chemotherapy, and like her cell phone rings, and this dude's just like, "Oh God, your dad's gonna come kill us!" Like, what the fuck?
Oh, she's actually going to the movies with her friends. I think she
Oh,
says,
well, that's
which
fine.
is still
They could
weird.
be wheeling her out in a gurney, taking taking her chemotherapy. Just get her to the movie like that. That was a really dumb joke. Uh, so weird question. What the fuck do you think their dad's job actually was?
I don't know because I don't think she ever mentions what he did. If she did, I don't remember.
She didn't. It looks like they live in a really expensive place. Uh,
Yeah.
he mentions hypnosis, and he also has guns lying around. Now, the gun thing could be like, yeah, he lives in America. I'm gonna have guns lying around. I don't know. Maybe he's like a weird therapist, weird hypnosis therapist. Then you have to consider like the cop said he like learned everything from him and he was his mentor. So is he like a hypnosis therapist hitman?
It's so like sort of ambiguous because they never really mention it. That I don't know. He could just be a crazy guy that likes guns and maybe works at like a fucking printing shop. I don't know.
He works at a printing shop and he owns a mansion.
Maybe he
Pretty.
owns the printing shop.
Oh, okay, yeah. Every time somebody doesn't pay up, he just fucking shoots them.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Do you think if they make 12 minutes too, how do they improve it?
Whatever narrative they decide to go with, I feel like trying to sort of rein it in a little bit, not focusing on so many sort of red herrings and just filler bullshit in the background of the story. I feel like that would help. Having a twist that doesn't create more holes than fix, it would help. And I think opening up the game, the level, right, something bigger, with more possibility for puzzles and things like that. I think that would also improve a lot.
When you say like
But
opening it up, do you mean like from the start or like more places open up as you go? I guess either
yeah,
would work, really.
I was thinking about in the original idea for the game, it took place in a narrative, but that's an interesting point because you could start in your house and then maybe it starts to progress outside your house. Maybe you're going outside in the neighborhood at night, sneaking around looking for things, trying to find something out.
Mhm.
That, yeah, there could be some sort of progression around that that could be really interesting.
I guess I just find it funny that like it's it's so fucking strange to me that like all the things I hate about this game were things I really loved at the beginning. Yeah, I've got a tiny apartment, but there's also so many possibilities in this tiny little apartment. Like when I realized I could go into the closet, like that was kind of fun. Not the part where my wife got gored per se, but more the part where I realized, oh hey, I can pick up a phone and try and call the police. That's funny. Uh, by the way, world's most incompetent comps. What the fuck?
Yeah, right.
I can only assume that like they had their script figured out and perhaps they got the actors in, paid them a shit ton of money, and then they left, and then they were like, fuck. Now we have situations that happen where there's gameplay dissonance and the situation's devolved and we don't have a piece of narrative for this. If they're doing 12 minutes too, I would just I'd stop having big names. I'm sorry, James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley. Honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell that these two were those actors if you unless this game said that they were those actors. That does
Yeah, I
say
think
something about their
Willem Dafoe is
range,
really the only one.
but it's not like they're gonna win a fucking award for this performance. They're playing two American adults. Anyone, I, not anyone could have done these. Like, I'm not a voice actor, but like, I feel like you could pay a lower grade voice actor to do these things. And yeah, I can only imagine that they found that there was gameplay dissonance, and then they're like, "Fuck, we don't have the line for it, and we can't get them to come back in." Shit. Although yeah, Willem Dafoe did pretty fucking good. I will say
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
it's fantastic.
I'd hire maybe less expensive voice actors, and then kind of I get them all to record their lines, but like maybe have like a clause that says, "Hey, you might need to come back in if we figure this shit out." Um, I want more situations in the game where like the actors are organically talking to one another because so many situations in this game feel like one-off lines that the actors recorded alone, put beside one another, and it just feels awkward.
Hmm.
Um, that's priority one because I would assume that they'd want to do something similar for the second game and that they want their cinematic experience. And yeah, I think you should shoot for that if that's what you want. Like you had us all in the first half. That I think that's how you get there. Um, I think so. You do that, you get more flexible voice acting. You aim for a less pretentious ending. Yeah, I think most importantly, you add more possibilities for interesting puzzles. Because this got a little bit brain dead by the end of it, of just doing the same shit over and over and hitting the same dialogue trees over and over.
I think something that also could help is, especially if they are going to open up the size of the levels and open up gameplay possibilities, creating more shortcuts as you go along. There was the one shortcut to get her to talk about what happened when she, thought she killed her dad.
Yeah.
Adding more of those shortcuts to speed things along would help a lot in the later game, or finding ways to entirely bypass stuff.
Hmm. No, that makes sense. I think for the next game, they should add a option to interact with the toilet. I want to shit in the toilet. I think that's
Okay.
key for great game design. Any game that lets you shit is automatically game of the year material.
You know what would be cool? And this would be a lot more difficult to pull off. But if you could play from both perspectives,
Yeah. Okay.
and they would need a narrative that's written in a way to make that possible, but that could be really cool. Even if it was a shorter narrative, if you can go through it from two completely different perspectives, that could be really interesting.
Very minor Amori spoilers, but it's kind of funny that my favorite game, like I call this game pretentious for what it does near the end of it, of haha, it was all a dream, and it's all actually a study of the mind. My favorite game of 2021 was Amori, and basically the whole game is a dream and a study of the mind. But the difference is it lets you know that it's a dream very early on, and it shows you the process of this character going through things that they've experienced. It's not just all dropped on you at the end. In an ending that you could potentially miss. I have no doubt that there is a percentage of gamers that, I don't know, got the initial like alone ending and just fucked off with this game. Again, there's kind of silly obtuse ways to get the other endings. Like the mindfulness ending is you agree to get hypnotized, but instead of looking at him, you look at the clock on the wall. It gets weird. And did it have to be that obtuse? I guess not. Uh, I guess people figured it out anyway. So does it really matter? I don't know. I think the point I'm trying to make here is that there's interesting ways to do it was all a dream. And there's interesting ways to do things like this rather than just hitting us at the end with it and expecting us to figure out how the fuck everything works. That really is my biggest gripe with this fucking game. It's not there for the purpose of being interesting. It really just feels like they gave up on the script and was like, man, wouldn't this blow their minds if they had to if we didn't give them an interesting answer and we just gave them the pieces, they just figured it out for themselves. Like I hate it. I've now said that like four different times. So
I think if we do assume that this is something like PTSD or some form of like mental illness,
mhm,
just having that in the game is not enough if you're not going to really pay special attention and like delicate care to such a important idea, right?
yeah, I will say that again. My interpretation that this is PTSD. I I have to admit that that is a very surface level interpretation, and if this is supposed to be that, then yes, it is a very surface level look of the effects of that.
Exactly. Yeah, I think if this was a sort of look into something like PTSD, this just wasn't the way to handle it. This wasn't the right way to go about it. And I guess for Luis Antonio, the developer, it's a learning experience. And hopefully he'll do better next time, right?
I believe was this his first game? His first solo game at the very
Oh,
least.
yeah, his first solo game. He's worked at Rockstar and he's worked at Ubisoft before, so he has experience on big games. But I think he wasn't like a programmer and stuff. This is his first game where he did a lot of the stuff on his own.
Well, I think at the very least, we can end this video by saying that the canon ending is that this entire thing is all just a daydream our main character is having while he's fucking his sister. That is the canonical ending, and you have to. And I'm not wrong because the game doesn't have a canonical ending. So fuck you. That's my interpretation. If I'm actually gonna end on a high note, I gotta say, it's a good first shot. We hate it, but it's, you know, you did it. You made something, and it caused us to talk about it for this long.
I'm glad that he tried it. I'm glad that he did this style of game, and I really do want to see what he does next because if he takes feedback on board and he improves it for the next one, we could have a really really good follow up.
Yeah, no. The first hour of this game indicates that, yeah, absolutely. Blueprints are there for something better. So let's break this loop. I have been Kaznarious, and with me has been the Pork Chopper.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine.
Thank you. Thank you, Biggie. See you later.
Yeah.
See you later, everybody.